All right, joining me on this week's episode of the Wisconsin Sportsman, I have Mr. Jim Crowley. Jim, how are we doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for having me on, Pierce. I was looking forward to this, buddy. So thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
likewise, man. Likewise. It has been, like we were just talking off air, it has been a fantastic spring for harassing bass. And it seems like it's kind of just continuing on that same trajectory right now as we head into the summer here. But you just got back from up north. How are things fishing up there?
It was great. As we were talking a little bit before, we've been filming at Mille Lacs for different shows that I've hosted over the years, probably 12, 13 years now, I think.
Hmm.
And we've had some really, really good outings there. But this year was incredible. We filmed 4 shows in 5 days, and I mean 4 complete shows. Smallmouth were extremely cooperative and sizes and numbers that I haven't seen in a while, and I know it's not just me because I've been seeing a lot of reports from that area. It's been a really, really good spring for smallmouth. We went into Ontario after that, and it was absolutely no different. We had to change tactics a little bit because the fish were just in a different phase of, I'm going to call it pre-spawn, because as you
Hmm.
said, it was so drawn out. But once we figured it out and dialed it in, again, it was pretty incredible. And it's been a great spring. We're into, July now, and we're almost done filming for the whole season. We've only got about 2 or 3
Holy
episodes
smokes.
left. Had me with a lot of editing and a lot of headaches, but you know what? I've had it the other way where you're struggling,
Yep.
to put together a season. And so this was just fun. We've had a lot of big fish this year, a lot of fish. And I think for this season and next season, viewers are going to get some really educational shows that we did. And I'm looking forward to hearing how they feel about it because we had a blast.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, you've kind of touched on it there. You are the host of Jim Crowley Outdoors. You've
Mhm.
got the Wired to Fish podcast. You've been in the outdoor media and in the fishing space for quite a while, man. You've got a long resume there. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started in that, where you're from, what all you do, and just tell us a little bit
Sh
about Jim Crowley here.
Sure. I think it's been, I don't know, 33, 34 years I've been in the industry now. I can't believe it's been that long. I had a full-time job too, but I started tournament fishing at the age of 20 23, I think, 23, and I was fortunate enough to have some local and regional, success, and then I ended up getting into television with a show that most of your everybody knows, Midwest Outdoors Magazine.
Yep.
And I started with them back in the late '90s, and I was very fortunate, learned a lot about television from them. I went everywhere from Mexico to numerous places in Canada and numerous lodges, throughout Canada, writing for them as well as, hosting and co-hosting episodes with them. And then probably around 2009 or 10, I started doing a YouTube thing right when it came out, and we started doing a show, that way. And then about, I don't know, it's probably close to 6 years ago now, Wired to Fish licensed their name to a streaming station, and then it became Wired to Fish TV, and that was probably one, maybe not the first, but one of the ones where they started branching off onto multiple platforms. So if you can be seen on Wired to Fish TV, you can actually be seen on 12 different things now, like Net or like, Plex and Sling, and things like that. And so that really broadened our fishing show out a lot. And then I started my podcast, which is Slick Fish Radio. They took that on as well, and so it branched off there, the Roku, Fire TV, Amazon Music, iTunes, and Spotify. And then in January, this past January, we started with Outdoor Action TV as well as Pursuit Up, which basically now, if you have a television, you can get Jim Crowley Outdoors. So it's been, I've always said that God has blessed me with an incredible ride. I've met some absolutely amazing people, and I've got to do what I love to do, and that's fish. And I've always said, I don't care if people agree with me or disagree with me. All I care about is they catch more fish because of it. And we've had a heck of a ride, and I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon.
That's fantastic, man. I love that. I don't care if they agree or disagree as long as they catch more
It's
fish.
all
That
I
is
care about is if they catch fish. That you know what I've told people for years. There's if all my social media channels. There's only three things we discuss on my social media channels. It's rod building, lure making, and God. If those are not three of your things, you probably don't need to be on my pages.
Mhm.
Otherwise than that, we that's what we like to talk about. That's what we like to discuss, and we're having a great time doing it. So I hope people are enjoying the ride.
That's fantastic, man. I love that. That's really, really cool. And so you're a Midwest guy, right?
Yeah, so I'm in Illinois, okay?
Yep.
So, I was born and raised in Chicago, I survived that, and, I moved to, the middle of the state in a little tiny town called Hayworth, that's where I live now, only about 3,000 people, and I've always said the difference between, like, Chicago and Hayworth is both places, they wave when they see you. Hayworth, they just do it with their whole hand, where Chicago, they do it with one finger.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. What did so that's interesting because they, growing up in the Chicagoland area,
Mhm,
it's a more urban area, obviously.
sure.
What was your introduction to fishing like? Like, what
Oh.
kind of got you hooked?
Oh, great. My dad. My
Super.
dad, and he started me in the boat when I was 3 years old.
Awesome.
And the story, as he used to tell me, goes, by the time I was 4 or 5, he didn't have to bring any toys in the boat anymore. All I wanted to do was fish.
Yep.
And I lived in the northwest side of Chicago. This is a true story. So my dad would work 5 days a week, and he had to drive about an hour and a half, 2 hours of work every day. Just nuts because of the traffic, right? So he'd come home, and on Sunday morning was when he could go fishing. So he would take me to Lake Geneva most of the time and fish in Williams Bay there and be at home before 11 o'clock so he could go to mass with mom and me. So he would, and then what he would do is he would take me out of school in the spring and the fall and take me fishing with his buddies. And so I grew up around a lot of older guys. So I learned respect as a young man. I had to, or I wouldn't be here today. Or
Mhm.
just he would have taken me out. So he always said, he goes, "You can go along as long as you respect these men that are my friends." And he made it very, very clear to me. And I learned, I think I actually learned a lot about communication and talking to older people at a much younger age. And I think as I grew, that definitely made me feel more uncomfortable in front of crowds, more comfortable doing things like this because we had conversations just like you and I are having.
Mhm.
And it was great. It's I never knew it was gonna lead to all of this, but I look back on it now and I'm very thankful that I got the opportunity to do all of that.
Definitely. That's such a cool story. And what like I haven't really thought of it in that regard of just that exposure at a young age and
Yeah,
being like what that really does for you. I think so often we think about it in terms of like, oh, I was this young when I started going to fish camp or up to deer camp or,
yeah,
whatever hunt camp or fish camp that you went to and everything. We think about it in terms of learning the skills and learning the art of fishing for bass or a specific
sure.
species or hunting in a certain way. But there's so much more to it. I really love that you hit on that, that it helps develop you just as an individual being exposed to that and like having to have those conversations, like you said, with folks who are your dad's age and bridging that gap of it's not just, Mr. Smith and Mr. Johnson or whatever that are along with the
Yeah.
trip, but it's also like they're not just your dad's friends. As you bridge that gap, they become your friends too. It's super cool.
Well, you're 100% right because one of them still, the last of my dad's friends that is living, I just talked to him for his 80th birthday about a week or so ago, Larry,
Awesome.
and about at least once a year, I try to take him fishing somewhere, and it's getting a little bit harder because he's getting older, but we remained friends after my dad passed, and, I just it is that tie back, the only tie back I really have left to my dad. So when he's in the boat and I catch a fish or he catches a fish, I think it takes us, I don't think, I know it takes us both back to when we were doing it with my dad because they were such close friends and they worked together for a long time. So yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Super cool. Yeah. Talk to me. So, like, we're coming up as we record this. Father's Day is this upcoming Sunday
Yeah.
and everything. Talk to me a little bit about sort of the transition or whatever as you kind of developed and continued to really dive into bass fishing and angling as a whole. You reach that point as fathers and sons do,
Mhm.
or mothers and sons, or whoever's fishing, where you kind of start to get neck and neck, and then eventually the young buck kinda passes. What did that look like for you guys?
It was pretty funny. I kinda remember actually when that happened, and I will tell you this, I've never been asked that question before. Excellent question, because it just made me flash back to we were on and it was Wisconsin. It was Lost Land, Ghost, and Teal Lakes in northern Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And I had just started tournament fishing. I was still pretty young, like 21, 22, somewhere around there. And I went on a fall trip with my dad and his buddies. I was working then, so I took the week off work and went up there with him. And we get to this creek mouth, and I'm like, "Hey, this ought to be a pretty good spot for largemouth." And my dad's like, "Well, we haven't caught that many here." I proceed to throw a spinner bait and put like 18 fish in a boat or something goofy like that. And my dad's looking at me going like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "How did you why?" And I'm like, "Well, they should be here. They should be here. There's running
Mhm.
water and, there were fronts and it was turnover, blah, 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 kind of stuff." But running water always negates that. I said, "So I wanted to find some running water." He's like, "Well, how did you know that?" I go, "I learned that last year when I started tournament fishing, but from a guy, and that's what I think my dad started seeing that, and then 3 or 4 years later, I was on television for the first time. And then my mom said he would get up on Sunday morning and watch Midwest Outdoors. And she goes, they'd see who the episodes were. And if you weren't on there, he's like, I'm watching something else, So, but yeah, it was just funny. But I think that was a moment when he kind of realized that, hey, maybe all this work I put in with this yo-yo kid of mine is actually paying off. That's when I think it
Mhm.
happened.
That's super cool. What an awesome story. Yeah, it's kinda that one moment where you don't want to admit, like, "Son of a gun, I didn't think about that." You're right.
Yeah.
Like, "Yeah, I never would have caught that. Darn." That's
Yeah.
that's super cool, yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, kind of on that note there, in that vein of when you get into tournament fishing and stuff, did you have any mentors that, you really
Oh, yeah.
learned a ton from, or was it just kind of I mean, it's like anything, right? You surround yourself with people who are hopefully better than you so that you
Oh,
can continue to improve and learn and everything.
no,
What were those
no.
early days of tournament like?
Yeah, no question about that at all. I was very lucky. I fished back in those days. There was a lot of bass clubs with not like bass clubs are today, but these guys were, we'll go out and have the tournaments and there'd be 20, 30 boats in those little club tournaments, right?
Mhm.
And so a couple of guys back then, one by the name of Ronnie Long, was older than me, and we became quite good friends for a while. But he kind of took me under his wing and showed me seasonal patterns, and I learned about why bass should be, what we thought about that all before forward-facing sonar and all that, and so what we learned about where bass should be. And then one of the staunchest competitors back in the day, back there, the Bloomington Road Bass Club probably produced more guys out of Illinois that went regionally and qualified for some of the bigger things and national type things than anywhere else in the state at that time. And that club is actually still around. Another gentleman by the name of Joe Snyder, who was absolutely one of the most incredible tournament anglers when I was in my 20s that I'd ever seen. Um, and I learned a lot from those guys. And there was a lot of those guys in that club that were older than me. Um, they teach you, they would help you a little bit until you started winning and doing well, and then it got kinda tight-lipped,
Yep,
It got kinda tight-lipped, but I would still look back and all that and say, all those gentlemen made me become better, because then I was very competitive. I just was. I used to be in martial arts before that. I was a black belt in taekwondo, and I was very competitive anyway, and so now to be put at something like that, and I like to win. And I know obviously you don't do that every time you go out, but I still have the same attitude when I go out and film a show. I want to figure out what's going on. I want to win the day. And even if it's in my mind, how can I be doing something better? How can I be more efficient? How can I do this? And I learned that back from those early days of being able to see something and try to, once you get that clue of what's going on, and try to be able to expand on that and then to be able to adjust when that changes. And I learned that, started to learn that way back when I was in my 20s, thanks to some of those older gentlemen who decided to give me an insight of how they've been catching fish.
sure. Was there ever a point in those early days, where you kind of, you have that transition from, "I'm going out to fish to have fun,"
Mhm.
Now I'm entering tournaments where there's, maybe some cash on the line here, or, I've, at the very least, I've sunk some money into this to get the boat there, to travel to this lake, to
Sure.
do all this stuff to get into the tournament. Was there a point where it started to feel a little bit more pressure in
Yes.
sort of a negative way, where it was kind of like, we're almost fishing for work here? And
Yeah.
how did you kind of reconcile with that?
Because of, I had a really good reputation for being consistent.
Mhm.
I obviously had some wins, but then I was very fortunate to cash a good number of checks. Doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday night or a Thursday night or 50 bucks, 100 bucks, 500 bucks, whatever. Um, but then you started feeling like you had to do that all the time. And after about 13 years of that, I remember in the BFLs, when the BFLs were getting real big, I finished fourth in the state one year, finished and missed going to the All American by one fish. But yeah, I know, I know, by one fish. And, I finished, at the regional that year, finished the highest as a person in Illinois. And when you come into the weigh-in and people are telling you got it, you hear them read it off and you miss it by one fish. I mean, one 12-inch fish is what I missed it by. I had hit my period of burnout, I think, right after that, and I was very grateful at that time that I had some television offers, coming in about being on, local and regional television shows, and then Midwest
Mhm.
Outdoors gave me the opportunity to travel. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, I'm going to miss this tournament. And I'm like, am I going to go back to Lake Shelbyville again and hope for two or three bites? Or now I've got the opportunity to go to Canada and broaden my horizons on fishing for a lot of different species of fish and learning more about those. And I'm very grateful that I went. I think that's where God went, "Here's a wall. That's where I'm stopping you. I need you to go in this direction."
Mhm.
And that's the direction I went then, is television, and I'm forever grateful that, that at the time I wasn't the only tournament I ever cried at. But I was very grateful that that's a turn that it took, because it meant a whole different life for me.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's super cool. And I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful for you that that was the pivot that you, or the door that opened for you at that moment there as well. That's really cool. Yeah, obviously you mentioned you've been in the industry and like fishing for bass, well beyond just, the 32, 33 years that you mentioned
Yep.
there. You've seen a lot of technological
Mm,
advancements
yeah.
in terms of the electronics, obviously forward facing sonar. I'm only asking that because you just mentioned it there.
Sure, sure.
Um, in terms of, I guess, how do I phrase this here? Trying to think of which way I don't want to load it too much. In terms of technology continuing to emerge and
Mhm.
improve over the course of your career, what stuff is there, anything that you found is not worth the while, like not worth the investment? Is there anything that like encourages you in a way that like gets you excited about the direction that things are going?
Yeah, when and especially, when it comes to electronics, when I first started, I learned a lot of stuff by instinct, which is how a lot of older guys did it back then,
Mhm.
right? And so I never had the real fancy graph stuff. I was pretty happy with a flasher showing me the change in the bottom, and the flasher came along, and then I think if I look back, I wish I would I I think I wish I would've got more into side scan when it first came out, because that can be so beneficial to people. But I've been asked this question, or a question like this before, and I'm gonna rephrase it, and then I'm gonna go back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
The most successful piece of equipment, I think, that I feel that I could not live without in my boat when it comes to electronics, is spot lock.
I love that answer.
Absolutely is 100% is spot lock. You could take all my electronics away, as much as I love them, especially some of the new stuff, it's so cool, but you could take everything away, but you better keep my spot lock.
Mhm.
I gotta have that. That has made more of a difference than everything else in electronics for me, is being able to hold on the spot. And I had an old tracker way back when that first came out. And I remember the first time I used it on the show that we were filming, and stayed off a log about 20 yards and pulled 8 fish off that log on a windy day, when there's no way I could have done that. No way I could have done that without spot lock. And it has been It has been extremely beneficial to me, so they can have all and I love all the electronics. I don't really have a electronic sponsor. I use all Humminbird stuff. The new, Humminbird Explorer units, I think, are easier than any electronics that I've ever used, and I really, really like them because I'll be honest, I'm not the greatest guy out there with electronics, but it's made it a lot easier to do things, to find things, and, and the Mega Live 2 has been a ball, not so much for catching fish on it, as is being able to find cover away from what you were originally fishing.
For sure.
And, like, if I'm fishing a weed line, I'm always scanning out to see if I can find a weed clump or another rock or something, and I may not see the fish there, but a lot of times if I find it, dropping a drop shot or dropping a jig down there, I'm gonna get bit.
Mhm.
And I think and the other thing that I think that thing has been so beneficial for is literally being able to find bait, pods of bait. That has been more beneficial to me to know for sure that I'm 100% in the right area and making me more efficient. Not that I always see the fish and catch it, but knowing that I have the opportunity to do so, then I stop watching that screen and start concentrating on what I'm doing.
Sure. Absolutely. When you're
That's
looking for
where
bait
yeah,
there,
yeah.
like, I guess I haven't used a sophisticated enough electronic to be able to actually identify a bait in there, like, and if you can paint a picture for me, like, what does that look for or look like on those screens? Is it just like,
Okay,
obviously, you
so
can see the rock or the log or
sure.
whatever?
A lot of times I can see literally a ball, a moving ball above something, and you
No
can see
kidding.
the fish, below it. I've literally seen it before where I've seen smallmouth coming in and out and diving inside. I couldn't catch them, but they were
Mm.
feeding like crazy. I've always said this is what forward facing sonar is great for is proving to you that you don't know everything because
Yep.
there are a lot more fish that ignore your stuff than they do hit it. I can just I
Mhm.
at least on my experience anyway. Um, but it's been really, really cool for that. The other thing is when you dial the stuff in, and I think the Mega Live is easy to do that. I've seen the thermocline, which is pretty cool on
Huh.
there. Yeah, and I've also seen algae blooms where you can see how far the algae bloom goes down in the water, and that has made me adjust my lure presentation. And that has been some really, really cool stuff. And I've heard even when I've done interviews with people and you've heard people go, "Hey, well, it's cheating. It's a cheater box." Okay, I got news for you. Why don't you go out there and you turn that thing on and see if you catch a fish right away. Those young kids who are doing that, a lot of them, they have to know how to find fish to know how to do it because I know how to
Right.
find fish. I still all the time cannot catch the ones that I see on there. So, as far as I'm concerned, they're using what they grew up on with they have more access to information now than we ever had. Times are changing. In my opinion, you have more intelligent fishing pressure out there now than you ever have been. That's not going to stop. So, as an angler, what you've got to do, no matter how old you are, is you have to learn to be more precise with your presentations. You have to understand what your lure is doing on every cast, and you better be paying attention because if you're not, somebody else is.
Mhm. 100%. I couldn't agree more with that, and especially like you said, like, oh, people think you can slap a, um, not live scope, forward-facing sonar on the
Yeah.
front of the boat, and they're just gonna be able to go out there and pound fish.
No,
Like, well, you
no.
still have to know where to go. You're not you can maybe you can just throw it on there, and you might eventually find some, but if you're just gonna grid search a lake until you figure out what's going on, like, you have to have some background knowledge
Yep.
going into that. You have to know, and even so, it's like, okay, if I'm we see that rock pile and it's in 24 feet of water and you're throwing an X wrap or something like that, or a
Yeah.
stick bait that's, buzzing over its head 20 feet, like, good luck. It's
Yeah.
that rock means nothing down there at that point. So, yeah, I like that a lot. That's a really great point. On the note of electronics and, just technology and everything, looking at your shirt there, you've got Onyx Fish. They're a
Mhm.
partner of your show, partner of this show as well.
Yeah.
How have you started to use Onyx as
Oh,
or Onyx Fish, and how has that changed your approach?
oh, yeah, for to a lot. And let's put it this way. So I had an Android, so I was using it. I have an Android, so I was using
Mhm.
it on my computer that I'm talking to you on right now. And so this is and I've tried other apps, and this is before I started working with Onyx. I bought the subscription to this, and I went, "This is easy." And the
Yep.
cool thing was when I pulled up the lake, that filtering system they have in the upper left-hand corner right there, when you can click on and say species of fish, search this area, bam, and it pulls it up.
Hmm.
And you can see abundance of fish, you can see trophy size potential. I was able to knock out lakes in Minnesota around where we were fishing at Mille Lacs. I love fishing lakes that have both largemouth and smallmouth in them because I think it's fun. I think it's fun for the viewer because sometimes you get into both of them,
Yep.
right? And it's fun. And so we found that. Boom, I found my exit, or I found my boat ramps on tiny little lakes that, and some of those ramps, just like in Wisconsin, if you don't know where that boat ramp is, there's a reason for that. They don't want you finding that,
Yep.
right? And there may be a boat ramp there that holds like 4 boats. It's public access, but that's all it may hold. And so I love finding those little bodies of water and then go explore. And now an Onyx made that so much easier to do my homework before I ever left the house. I wasn't asking at the tackle store, "Hey, is there any good lakes around here?" I mean, I still do. I love asking for local information, but now I already had a game plan by Onyx to lakes that I was going to consider because these already had what I was looking for. This made my time actually that it was going to be on the water a lot more efficient because I wasn't looking for these lakes when I got there. I found them. I was on the X before I went.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now I love with the weather pattern stuff on there where I can tell wind. And now I look at it in the morning before we go out. Everything is in one app, and it just makes it so much easier. And I mean, those guys have it dialed in. I mean, Onyx has a dialed in period with everything they do, whether it be hunting or anything else. But when Onyx fish, and especially when you can use it in Illinois here, I've even used it on lakes that I've went to before and go, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And what the thing I like about it the most is you're not getting where Uncle Fred caught 2 bass the other day,
Yep.
and that's where they put a mark. This is fisheries information. This is legitimate biology, backed up with study that this is a stocking program. This is this, and it's as recent as it gets. And everything like that I said in one app. And for a guy like me, if I can use it, folks, anybody out there can use this thing. I'm telling you, if I can do it, so can you. And it's a great app. It's just a fantastic app.
Hmm. Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick sec to tell you about Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Lone Wolf Custom Gear is as good as it gets when it comes to mobile hunting equipment. Whether you're a saddle or stand guy, public land or private, Lone Wolf Custom Gear has a set of sticks, a stand, a camera arm, and any number of accessories to get you closer to your target buck. To make it even better, everything is 100% USA sourced and made right here in the Midwest. And it's even assembled right across the river in Iowa by hunters who love chasing deer just as much as you do. To build your kit today, go visit lonewolfcustomgear.com. Now, let's get back to the episode. Absolutely. Like you said, it's intuitive. It's so simple, and you've got
Yeah.
everything right there. And I mean, we planned my most recent trip up north. We planned that back in January,
Hmm.
February, started doing that, and I started picking around in Onyx fish. And so for months, I've just been like scouring this thing and this whole area, and being able to I love the comparison of how this lake stacks up compared to the state average. And you
Hmm.
get that like above or like trophy potential or the
Right.
like what do they call it? Outlier
Yeah.
abundance or whatever for
Yeah.
different species and everything. And so you can key in on that kind of stuff and see how it compares to neighboring lakes and really develop a plan. Not to mention the detailed descriptions of what the structure looks like along the shore and how
Sure.
some of them have the fishing hotspots, some of them don't, but most of them still have some data in there that says like, oh, this back bay over here is muck, or
Yeah.
it's, submerged vegetation, or it's rocks or boulders or riprap or whatever it may be. It is fantastic. Like that absolutely saved the planning of our fishing trip, and just like helped us because really, I mean, my buddies who just bought the place up there, they'd only fished a handful of times. And so to
Yeah.
be able to go in and say like, well, just from what I've seen so far, these little points back here, these islands in here, that little creek mouth there, like it says that should be pretty good. Let's start there and then we'll branch out. And once we kind of see whether or not there's any validity to that. And then boom, we all come back and meet for lunch and everybody had a great morning. And it
Yeah.
was in large part to that.
The other thing that I use it for, and maybe you've done this, and just for your listeners and viewers to think about this, is that I also go on the Onyx app, and when you're looking at the abundance, you're looking to fish species that are in each lake. Whatever I'm fishing for, largemouth or smallmouth, and obviously you could do this for walleyes as well. But I'm starting to look, what are some of the other fish in here? So,
Mhm,
am I seeing a high abundance of bluegills? Am I seeing a high abundance of perch? Because then I start thinking, okay, what are these largemouth and smallmouth feeding on?
for sure.
And if there's a higher abundance of perch on there, I may match some of my lures accordingly because I'm going, you know what? I'm going to remember, fishing is, always has been, and always will be a game of odds, right?
Mhm.
So the more odds you put in your favor, the better off your chances for success. So if I got a higher abundance of perch on this, as I'm reading on the Onyx app, I'm going to start taking some of those lures and going, maybe I should try some perch colors or some perch shapes. If it's bluegills and maybe it's a lake that's all largemouth, there's a lot more bluegills in here. Maybe I'm going to start tailoring my swim jigs or my bladed jigs to look more like bluegills. And before we couldn't do that, we had to go and actually see. Now I get an idea of because to me, especially northern lakes, forage base is extremely important,
Mhm.
especially in clear bodies of water. And I want to know what the forage base is of the fish that I'm pursuing, whether it be northern pike, largemouth, smallmouth, whatever. I want to know what they're feeding on, because if I can figure out what they're feeding on, I got a better chance of matching my lures to hopefully catch some of those fish, trying to match their forage.
Absolutely. I love that. I hadn't thought about that in terms of looking at using Onyx fish for the abundance of potential
Hmm.
bait fish there. On that note, when you're going up to some of these lakes and everything, like I do much more river fishing than I do lake
Hmm.
fishing. So like I spend a lot of time in the lower Wisconsin River, big emerald shiner and shad fishery in there. Get a big hatch that's going on right now. I'm waiting for the river to drop so that
Hmm.
fish can get back to crashing on bait and everything. But when you're going up north and you're looking at other stuff, trying to assess what the primary food source is and forage is up there, how do you go about doing that? Are you looking at what's the habitat like in there? Are you looking at fisheries data? Like, how do you establish whether or not um, it's a shad fishery or a smelt or any sort of forage like that? What do you look for in there?
Data is one of them, and so I'll give you recent example I can give you is when we went up to Canada here. We were fishing for smallmouth, and we were fishing on a place called Calm Lake, and just looking at, they had perch in there and have other stuff, and that's typical smallmouth stuff and some other minnows and everything. But one thing that I found out through the owner that these fish really key in on, and I mean, you could tell they keyed in on them. Well, let me tell you the fish first. It was Cisco's. Okay.
Hmm,
And these are kind of a bluish, silvery, whitish fish. While he was telling me stories about in the summertime, they will gang up on certain points and they will crash the Cisco's at the surface.
mhm.
And to me, and these fish get square. I actually made a comment in one of the episodes we filmed this. I'm like, this fish is almost as square as it is long. I mean, they were so bulky. I mean, they're just solid. And I go, that is, I attribute that to a lot of their diet. It's because of those Cisco's. Another example, when we used to go film up in northern Manitoba, we used to fish a little Churchill River system, and the pike there would get huge. They'd get, I mean, thick, heavy, heavy. Well, one of the things that's in that river system is burbot. And since there's no lake trout in that system, who's feeding on the burbot? A greasy, oily, high protein fish, those pike. That's why they get so big.
Hmm,
So a lot of our bucktails were brown and white.
sure.
And we would catch, 45s, 46s, big pike, right? 45, 46-inch pike on these brown and white bucktails or brown and white jerkbaits or anything with a dark back and a white belly. Well, you're matching one of their preferred. Yeah, they're going to feed on walleyes. Yeah, they're going to feed on perch. But if they got a chance to get a burbot, I guarantee you they're going to go after it. It's like a smallmouth. What's he going to go after? Probably it's a crayfish, right? That's a
Yep.
very high protein thing for them. But what else are they? gonna be doing. If they're looking up, they're going after those. If they're not on the bottom and they're looking up, they're probably gonna be wanting to try those Cisco's. So with that being said, one of our most popular baits on the last trip was I throw this little teeny tiny bladed jig that we make. One of the companies I work for is Lure Parts Online. And the reason I'm throwing a name in there is because they make a small little tiny blade that you can make miniature bladed jigs with. For some of your listeners might know as a chatterbait, like a really small one. It only gets
Mhm.
about 3 inches long, not even. And I would make this with a blue and white skirt. When those smallmouth would hit it, they would about rip the rod out of your hand. And if there was any breeze blowing that day at all, we would pick up and throw that bladed jig. And I had skirt strands coming off by the end of the day. They annihilated it. When it was dead calm, then we were throwing just a black hair jig, but it had a little bit of silver and blue tinseling. Whether they thought it was a mayfly, whether they thought it was whatever, but those two baits, but one of them for sure was at least closely identified to those Cisco's, and it paid off for us. It put some big fish in the boat, and I think that is important, especially on going north like that. As I said, I'm what I consider a forage based angler. I want at least that forage base, knowing what's in there, at least gives me an idea where to start. It may not be where I end up, but it's where I start.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. I love that. You mentioned there the if there was any wind, you were
Mhm.
throwing that skirted bait there, and if there was no wind, you're going to a more subtle, like a hair jig type
Yeah.
presentation there. Why is that?
Okay, good, great question. Usually on windier days, and I will bladed jig is just one of those things I always have in a boat with me, whether it be for largemouth or smallmouth. Heck, I
Mhm.
make my own big ones for northern pike. They love them. But wind has always been a contributing factor to that bait being more successful unless I'm close to grass. Okay.
Okay.
But in open water, I like, and if there's a little bit of stain on the water, I like throwing that bladed jig. I can cover water really good. Um, since I make my own, I can control what kind of vibration I want by either putting a size 2, 3, or 4 split ring on it. I can change the vibration of that bait. We could do a whole nother episode just on bladed jig
Oh,
because
yeah. My wheels are spinning.
oh yeah, because I can change the vibration and the action of the bait by changing the split rings as well as the size, and the trailer. So anyway, but so I like wind unless I'm around vegetation. I'll throw a bladed jig over the top of vegetation or in holes of
Mhm.
vegetation whenever I can. If it's dead calm, especially for smallmouth like that, and you can see if they're not changing baits. I'm never going to try to force feed. I've tried it and it works. Try force feeding a fish a bait and they just don't want it.
Yep.
Well, when they first hit it early in the morning, low light, that's fine. And all of a sudden, I'm having follows to the boat. That's it. And all of a sudden, they're darting off. They're not taking it. Okay. That means I got to change something. I don't always change color first. Usually I change depth to retrieve speed first. That's usually more important than color. But smallmouth, as you know, can be really picky on color. Really, really
Mhm.
picky. They're like walleyes sometimes. And so I'm like, this is just not working. So since it was dead calm and really hot and still, we noticed a bug hatch was going on. There was just a lot of bugs in the area. And I looked at my camera guy and I said, you know what? We got to start throwing that hair jig. We've been looking for a good hair jig bite, all year and we just haven't come across it yet. I mean, I was like 3 cast into it and she loads up. And yeah, and I'm like, okay, 3 casts later, loads up. Now I know what we're doing.
Mhm. I like
And
that.
then we started figuring out where they were coming from.
Mhm.
Um, but in the morning or low light, and then later in the afternoon when that's an early evening, late evening when that sun would start setting, that low light condition, they could hone in because remember, especially smallmouth, they're sight feeders first. They
Yep.
could hone in on that bladed jig easier with that lower light. Or when it's windy, then they could also, it's a lot easier to control than that hair jig in the wind. I can't control a 1/16 ounce hair jig very good in the
Right.
wind. But when it's dead calm, I can control it just fine. Um,
Got it.
okay. There's two things. How can I be more efficient with my cast? And what can the fish see when they can see it better than they can the other bait? So there's a couple
Mhm.
things that come into play there, but those are the two main baits. And so that's how we would that last trip, that's how we would, go between the two.
Sure. So that wind is really you're looking at that wind is blowing across the surface of the lake. It's distorting the surface. It's creating chop, and then that is refracting less light or allowing less light through the surface. Got it. I hadn't thought about that. I
Easy
always look
ea
directly just at the clarity of the water, but I mean, I
Easier for them to see and find that bait.
for sure.
My all-time favorite lure of all time, bar none, especially when it comes to smallmouth, X-Rap size 10 hot pink.
I like that.
Hot pink.
I
And
like that.
I have caught more big smallmouth on that jerkbait when the water temperature is 55 and below.
Mhm.
Really cold water temperature, you know, as a smallmouth guy, smallmouth can be triggered by really, really bright, obnoxious colors.
Yep.
And that pink, you know, and I've been asked the question 100 times. What do you think they think it looks like? I don't know, and I don't care. I don't care. I just know they eat it. So I don't need to know why all the time.
Mhm.
I need to know when and where.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, and I know when is when that water temperature is below 55 degrees, and where is usually or when is usually when you got pre-spawn, is that's really good for that. I've caught them after that on that too, but that
Mhm.
pre-spawn condition, especially in cold water, that X-Rap is and everything from big muskies I've caught on that fishing for smallmouth, the big smallmouth, the largemouth, it's just but smallmouth, that is just that, and I've got other X-Raps and other jerk baits that I'll throw the rest of the year, but that cold water, that that cold water like that, and you've got the water clarity for it, they just cream that thing. I don't care why, I just know that they do.
Yeah. I like that. You're the second I just had, Tony Peterson on a couple weeks ago. We were talking about, fishing for smallies on the Mississippi River,
Mhm.
and he also brought up, the color pink in his flukes or whatever it may be,
Yep.
and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going up north. I'm gonna be fishing some Tannic water, that kinda stuff." Like, I'll tie a couple of pink streamers, just some Murdic
Yeah,
minnows, but just with a pink back, that'll be it, and they got crushed, and then I took them to the Wisconsin River last week, and they got
got
crushed.
crushed.
Like, I was fishing chartreuse and white and even silver and white, picked up a couple. As soon as I switched to pink, I mean, I had a fish eat literally boat side in our canoe while I was just trying to slap the fly in the water and just get it soaked so that it would sink faster on my next cast, and I had, like, a 14-inch smallmouth come just unglued right next to
Oh,
the
yeah.
boat and come up and just chow it, and I was like,
The
"Maybe this pink is onto something." So
there's an episode we just released on Wired to Fish TV where what we're catching them on is pink and white, swim baits, 2.8, and a pink and white mini bladed jig, and I mean,
Mhm.
it is pink, pink. Crushed it. Absolutely just and you could wear you couldn't even see the bait. It
Yep.
was pretty awesome. Now, I don't know, but it stands out better, and we were fishing through reeds, a lot of reeds in shallow water,
Mhm.
and there's no doubt in my mind, they can see that wherever they're coming from, they can see that pink, that contrast to that pink and white coming through there a lot easier.
Right.
Um, and I threw black ones and I threw other ones, we caught fish on that, but when you put that pink and white one back on, I just think they could see it from a greater distance.
Mhm.
And when their bite window is bigger where and they can see that bait, I've seen smallmouth, I'm sure you have, them come from 20, 30 feet away to literally crush the thing, literally jump in a boat chasing the thing. So yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, definitely. What makes you wonder too, just the whole pink theory, because like obviously in the driftless we've got the pink squirrel is
Mhm,
the famous little
heard of
nymph
that.
and all that, and it's
Yeah.
always like, okay, well, what like it doesn't really look like anything, but
No.
it's just got this little pink collar. It looks kind of bushy. It could be a scud. It could be like, sort of something a little caddisy, but not really. Like, I don't know, if you tie it skinny, it looks like a mayfly, but as long as it's got that pink, they seem to lock in on it. And like I've heard theories of as it gets further down in the water column, that red's the first color to get filtered out. And so maybe it turns the perfect shade of tan or it gets some weird iridescence or what. I don't know. But
You just I heard a diver tell me years ago, you just hit on it. The
mhm,
deeper that pink gets, it almost gets a brown.
yep. Yeah.
And what I okay, I'll go for that. You know,
Right.
if that's why they're eating it, I'm
Great.
fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that, but that would make sense to me because a lot of times, a lot of our baits are just a lighter or darker shade of gray. Is the
Hmm.
deeper they go, the only bait or the only color that retains its true color at any depth, is lime green.
Hmm.
See that Rapala right behind me up there?
Yep.
What's the number one selling crankbait color of all time? It's fire
Oh,
tiger.
the fire tiger. Yep. Exactly. I love
Yeah,
it.
and
That's
so
funny.
maybe that's just because they can see That and if you look at deep diving crankbaits, most of the time, the most successful, whatever brand they are two-tone. And if you look at them, there are a lot of those brands that have that lime green somewhere either on top or bottom of them. Maybe there is
Hmm.
something to that.
Yeah, definitely. Let me ask you this. You touched on crayfish there and just
Mhm,
on color right now. My wheels are spinning. I read a book by Mike Lawson called Spring Creeks, I think it was, or Fly Fishing
mhm.
in Spring Creeks, or all that. There was a bit in there, and I, to my knowledge, I haven't personally seen it, but he had a theory that if you see trout that are particularly colored up, like
Mhm.
really, really vibrant, bright colors, they've been eating scuds, and the omega-3s in the scuds are what give it that super iridescent, really vibrant, bright color. First time I've ever heard that theory, but I'm curious, as a guy who's caught a pile of smallmouth in both, shad and, bait fish fisheries and also crayfish
Mhm.
fisheries, have you noticed a difference in the coloration or maybe even the markings of crayfish eating fish or smallmouth as opposed to bait fish eating fish?
That's a great question, and I haven't. I have noticed, um, how can I say this? Um, I've noticed when they're eating 'em. Like
Okay.
when okay, like, Lake of the Woods a couple years ago, there's a huge, massive infestation on Lake of the Woods of rusty crayfish,
Yep.
okay? And the smallmouth we were catching literally had rusty crayfish coming out of both ends. They were regurgitating them. My boat carpeting was disgusting.
Oh, I'm
But
sure.
we were catching and we were throwing red crankbaits, and red craw plastics, and we threw other ones too, and they touched them, but not nowhere near as much. But we were catching big walleyes in that area. We were catching big smallmouth in that area, and as much as they were regurgitating these crayfish, bottom literally had to be crawling with them. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen, where hook coming up and they're throwing them up.
Mhm.
You know, they were gorging themselves on them. Now, the only thing that I've noticed back to your question, the only thing that I've noticed different wise is sometimes I think on some of the bait fish, the fish seem to be stockier.
Okay.
Okay, like I just again I'm gonna go back to that trip we just had where
Mhm.
Cisco's, you know, like a these fish were really strong. I would suspect smallmouth we all know are strong anyway, but these fish fought like they were river fish, and they
Sure.
weren't. These are just lake fish, and they had so much power and so much energy. You know, a 4 pounder seemed like you were fighting at 5 or 6 minutes. You know, it
Mhm.
might not have been that long, but it sure seemed that long. And they were just they just seemed broader, you know, and compared to regular lake fish where like on Mille Lacs where I think pretty much they were feeding on I'm we think they were feeding on perch and crayfish because just in the areas that we caught them on, and I could be completely wrong on that. But when I know that bait fish is a major thing in there, especially like those Cisco's, those fish seemed a lot thicker to me for their size. They were shorter and thicker. Make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, wasn't sure because 'cause we've all seen those smallmouth that get, that real awesome war paint
Oh,
and, the
yeah.
striping down the side. They just look crazy looking, and then you get those other ones that are basically just kinda that all uniform brown or green kinda looking color, and it's like, it's still a
Well,
cool smallmouth, but
I do know I love this what I call the stripies, right? The
Yep.
war paint ones like that. But I know when you're fighting a fish like a Mille Lacs and you can see that fish out there and all you see is a dark brown spot in the water, that's a good one there, boy. That's a big one. That
Yep.
when it is dark brown, dark black, and that's all you can see is that shape out there, you're going, that's probably gonna be over 4.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a really, really good fish, you know? So, yeah, that's just something that smallmouth guys get excited about, man.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's it.
Absolutely. Well, man, we're coming up on, as this comes out, it's gonna be the beginning of, or end of June here.
Mhm,
Um, as we're, heading into what can often feel like kind of the dog days of summer here. I
mhm,
was just talking with a gentleman earlier this morning, about how we're getting spoiled right now, but we're a little worried that there's a storm coming of
Yeah,
heat in July or August for us here. But as we start heading into this post spawn, although if the trend continues, maybe it won't
yeah.
be fully post spawn, but
Till
as we head
September, we
into
don't know, I don't know, yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
As we head into summer bass fishing here, where does your mind go in terms of what are you expecting the fish to do? And what are your some of your top three ways to target
We're
bass
gonna
at
be
this
we're
time
gonna
of
be
year?
chasing a lot more largemouth this summer because we've spent so
Nice.
much time filming earlier this year on smallmouth, so we're gonna be chasing a
Hmm.
lot of largemouth. And so, the number one thing that I can think that's going in a boat right away is a frog.
Yep.
That's frog is definitely gonna be one of my best ways to cover water. It's a big fish bait.
Hmm.
So, that a jig is always gonna be in my boat. I have a jig in my boat from the beginning of the season till the last day that I step out. I love fishing a jig, whether it be a swim jig or a heavy cover jig. I just love fishing a jig. It's always productive, and it's productive for big fish. The other thing I'm gonna have with me, without question, number 3 is gonna be a drop shot.
Like that. Now you
And
say it's a big fish bait. It's a big fish lure. Let me push back. What are things that are not big fish baits,
um, I don't know,
or is
you
it
know,
how you fish it more than anything? I'm
yeah,
assuming.
because I don't fish a spinnerbait as much as I used to anymore. I used to fish
Hmm.
them a lot, and they still work, but those are more to me of a fall bait anymore. And unless I'm fishing a river system, then I still have a spinnerbait tie. I have a single spin that I tie all the time that I'll fish on a river system. But I'm gonna be fishing a lot of lakes this fall, or excuse me, this summer. And so that frog is gonna come more into play, a bladed jig again if it's windy, but then a regular jig, probably a wacky worm a little bit for sure, especially if we're fishing weed lines. But then to thoroughly cover an area and just get bit, no doubt is gonna be a drop shot as well.
Sure.
Because where a drop shot may not catch a lot of big fish, although I've caught some pretty big fish on a drop shot, it's gonna give me a better idea of what's in the area that I'm at. I may be able to pick off a couple big fish on the top water, um, or pitching a jig to weed lines and letting it fall down. But after I'm done with that, if that's been a productive area for me, I am not leaving that area without throwing a drop shot and going back over there to pick up any remaining fish, because that is just a technique that just flat out works. Any bass angler, largemouth or smallmouth, should, depending on the area of the country, should probably never be without a drop shot. That's just always a rig that is going to catch you something. It just gets bit.
For sure. Absolutely. Is there an order in which you like say you're going to a lake you've never been to before,
Mhm,
you're going to prospect, right? You've got your frog, you've got your some sort of a jig in there, and then you've
mhm.
got your drop shot. Is there an order of operations you'd like to check things off in terms? Do you like to start high and work low, start high? Is there specific types of structure you'd like to key in on right off the bat and then work out from? Or what's your
Yeah,
exploration process like?
I've always been a visual guy, so I am
Hmm.
gonna alleviate and look at visual cover first. What does this lake offer me? Is there a lot of grass in it? Is there grass and laydowns? Is there grass and rock? Where do these 2 things meet? In other words, where does rock and sand meet? Where does the weed line end? Where does it start? I'm going to be looking for transition areas. And so with smallmouth, we know that's always a big thing. They love transitions, but so do
Hmm.
largemouth. And so I'm going to be looking for that. Is there a shallow area of the lake in the summertime that that I can fish shallow, but maybe has deep boat docks on it? Okay, Wisconsin and Minnesota, I'm always looking for lakes with boat docks on it. They got boat docks on it, I'm always gonna have a place to start, always. And then I'm probably gonna broaden out from there. Okay, so they may not move up if it's a sunny day, they may not really get on those boat docks till later in the day. Okay, if I find a good section of boat docks, is there a weed line 50 yards behind me that I'm missing? That I need to go look at first. I need to get off that bank and go look. I know where they're gonna go to when that sun gets high, at least some of them. Where are they coming from? That's what I need to go find then. And so early in the morning, I may start out with that bladed jig if it's windy or if it's cloudy. If it's still, I'm probably going to start out with a swim jig. And because that's always going to get bit. That's just a way
Hmm.
I can cover a lot of water and come through just about everything. And it'll come through all types of cover. And, there are people out there that confuse cover and structure all the time. And there's guys in this industry that get paid a lot more money than I do that still can't figure out what the two are. And just for anybody listening, Structure is not a brush pile. Structure is not a boat dock. Structure is an irregular change in bottom contour. So structure is a point, it is a hump, it is a break. Okay? It's a change in the bottom. Cover is grass, is a brush pile, is lay down logs. So I could be fishing structure like a point, and that could be good. If it's got one or two types of cover on it, it's probably going to be even better. It's going to up my
For
odds in
sure.
giving fish a reason to be there. And I just try to clarify that when I can because I think it's confusing to new anglers.
Mhm.
And because, well, am I fishing structure or am I fishing cover? Know the difference. There is a difference between the two. If I'm telling you I'm fishing structure, I'm probably fishing something offshore or I'm fishing a change in the bottom somewhere. Okay. If I'm fishing cover, then chances are I'm going to be fishing shallow, or unless I'm telling you, I was fishing a point, so I'm fishing structure and there are brush piles on that point.
Mhm.
Okay. Then I'm fishing cover on top of structure. So, but when I first get to a lake, I'm looking for shallow cover that I can relate to first. Those I'm probably going to be picking off individual fish. When I find that, then I'm going to start looking maybe for some offshore structure to where maybe I can find groups of fish to make my day last longer.
For sure. Gosh, I love that breakdown of cover versus structure. It's the same thing, like, if you're looking at, a deer property, it's habitat versus terrain, right? It's being able to differentiate the 2 and
Yeah.
understanding they are not equal. One has to be a part of the other.
Mhm.
That's so huge. I'm so glad that you just clarified that distinction there, because I think the majority of our listeners right now just went, "Oh,
Ah.
sure.
And you're
Okay."
gonna you're gonna see people on TV do it all the time. You're gonna read somewhere on your phone, somebody do it all the time. Now you know the difference. So if you're confused, you can actually understand what they're saying. They may be saying it wrong, but now you can hopefully you can understand what they're saying. It makes it easier for you to go out and differentiate between the two.
Definitely. I love that just you mentioned in there, time of day plays a large factor in that
Mhm.
too. Like, they're not gonna be under the boat dock right first thing in the morning necessarily. They might be, but,
Might
like,
be.
they're probably going out to feed and then
Mhm.
coming back to, I mean, it's kinda like that bed to feed pattern with whitetails, right? Like, they're predatory fish. They're gonna go find somewhere that they could eat when it is the
Yeah.
safest for them to go and eat, and if you're sitting there fishing in their bedroom while waiting for them to come back, like, you're not gonna have
Yeah.
a whole lot of luck.
One thing about rivers is current will always position fish. So you can find a school of fish really shallow in some cases on a river system because
Yep,
current will position those fish. On a lake and sometimes a natural lake, a lot of times on shallow cover, you're fishing for individual fish. Not
yep,
all the time, not all the time, but especially lakes that have a lot of pressure, a lot of boaters on them, you may get up to a boat dock and catch one fish off it. You may have a boat dock where there's 6 or 7, but realize chances are those fish are coming shallow for feeding opportunities, and you probably just pulled up when those fish were there. Because the one thing forward-facing sonars definitely taught us is that fish don't sit still very long at all.
right.
They are constantly, almost constantly moving.
Mhm.
And so you just have to, and if you realize that, when I start finding fish in certain areas, and a lot of times, like if I'm fishing boat docks, it could be the right post on a boat dock, for example. Then I'm going to see how many boat docks that I can find, say they're in 3 foot of water, that are close to deep water on the right side of that boat dock. And then, I mean, I'll make other casts to the other things and pick apart that dock, but I'm really gonna concentrate on that one. If I start seeing that, then I'm not gonna start wasting any time. Then I'm gonna be going to the right side of those posts until things start to change. And I've really seen it where they have been on one area, and a lot of times it's because the sun positions them there.
Yep, for sure. Have you noticed in your fishing for bass, we're talking boat docks right here, I started getting in my head a little bit when I was up north this last time, where for whatever, I just lost confidence fishing around boat docks, because
Mhm,
in my mind, I was like, everyone and their grandkids stand out on that dock and they throw their, their slip
mhm,
bobbers, or they're throwing whatever they throw out there, and they're doing it whenever they have 5 minutes. If they're like me, they're just going to walk out, throw a
mhm.
couple casts, and then come back in my mind, the fish have seen it all. They're probably pretty pressured. You'll still find a couple, but they're not going to be. as unpressured as they might be on that one shoreline where there's no cabins over there. It's all, just natural deadfall or whatever it may be. Have you noticed any validity to that theory, or was I just in my head?
Well, yeah, every angler is different. I will tell you this, I don't mind because if somebody's casting out from their boat dock, especially if dad is there with their kids, I look for certain things on boat docks. I look for night lights,
Hmm.
okay? Because sometimes they will turn
Oh,
on their
sure.
night lights that will
Yep.
attract bait fish, and those bass could be conditioned to be around there anyway.
Uh-huh.
The other thing is if I see a bunch of rods in a rod holder, chances are if there's crappies in that lake, there's gonna be a brush pile somewhere around those things,
Sure.
somewhere around that dock. So I pay attention to that too. I don't really worry. And obviously, if somebody's out on the dock, I'm probably not going to make a cast up there. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes if they're coming down to the dock, hey, if they don't want me to fish it, that's fine. I got plenty of other docks. No big deal. I've really worked over the years on. I'm a really I'm anal. The only way I can say it about casting.
Uh-huh.
I have I try to be, and I mean, I in my younger days when I had better sight. Anyway, I would put quarters on the floor and pitch that jig to a quarter. And I still try to do that. I try to respect that homeowner as much. I know that dock is going to be a position that I'm going to have a chance to catch a fish in. And your first cast is going to be the most critical. You can
Yep.
catch them on the second or third, but your first cast is going to be the most critical. So I am already looking at the next dock while I'm fishing the one, thinking, where is that cast going to go? And what angle do I need to be? One, to get that bait in there without banging their boat or banging their boat dock, and two, what angle is going to give me the best opportunity to get that fish out of there where he's not wrapping me up around a dock post or a
Yep.
dock chain or anything like that. So there's a bunch of things. I got a lot of space left up here, dude. There's a lot of things that bounce off in there. And and so I'm looking at that angle. And it's true. I'm always looking ahead and trying to figure out how that cast is, because I've pulled so many fish off docks and big ones off docks that it's just become a staple of being. I know we're going to start there. I want to build from there. But some days, it could be a cold front. After a cold front on a natural lake or a reservoir, there's three places that, if we're just talking bass, are going to go: rocks, stumps, and docks.
Yep.
And so, and if you've got natural lakes with grass lines, that's going to be a whole different light thing. I'm always going to fish grass first. But if you don't have that, rocks, stumps, and docks. And so I'm always gonna look in those three areas. And docks have been so productive for me over the years that it's hard not to at least start there. So, and early in the spring, sometimes a shallow boat dock will be the best. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if a dock has that much water on it. Eventually, sometime of the day, there's probably going to be a bass underneath it. They're going to come up and check
Yep.
for bluegills or check for something. So, I've got different ways to approach docks with different baits, but it's always something that I look forward to fishing because I know I am going specifically to a target that I know has a high opportunity of being a fish there. And once I figure out one or two bites on that dock, we're going to have a time.
Hmm.
We're going to run it. We're
Sure.
gonna run that, and we're gonna figure out how to pull those fish off those docks. It's one of my favorite. If I could only fish for largemouth bass one way, it would be skipping a jig underneath the boat dock. Just hang on, dude. I'm back to 7 years old, hooting and hollering, having a ball. That's my
Yep.
absolute favorite way to catch largemouth, is yanking them out from underneath the boat dock. I love it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, everybody's got that largemouth memory. Even if it's just one, it might not have even been the first one.
Yep.
But even if it's like a 10-inch fish, if it
Sure.
blows up on it, or like you pull it out from under there and you're like, oh, whoa, hold on a sec. I don't know
Oh
what
yeah.
that is. And then yeah, something about that just burns itself into your psyche. And yeah, you just can't get enough of it. That's awesome. Dude, you're dropping so much information right now. Just little tidbits here. I don't even know if you realize that you're doing it. I'm sure you do, but like I am just lapping it up right now, man. This is fantastic.
I I
Talk to
I
me.
enjoy talking fishing, and you're a great host. So what else you want to talk about?
Dude, tell me about these urchin baits. I'd never heard of nor seen one, and then all of a sudden I was looking through your page and you were rigging one up, and
Yeah.
I saw them while I was in Fleet Farm a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "What on earth is that?" My initial thought was like, they're trying to copy the tequila, that dirty little, streamer pattern that's
Yeah.
just a weird woolly bugger with massive legs. what the hell is this urchin thing supposed to imitate, and how do you fish one?
Okay, so if you remember back this far, when the wacky worm first came out, and this was in the
Mhm.
mid '90s, mid to late '90s, we all said that was the stupidest looking piece of plastic we ever
Yep.
saw. Man, was I wrong about that. I catch fish in that all over the place. One of my favorite baits to throw. It's a lot of fun. Then the Ned rig came out, and we went, now that's the stupidest looking piece of plastic we were found out, and we caught fish in both freshwater and saltwater and numerous species of fish on the Ned rig. Then
Mhm.
along came the urgent bait. It looked at the Ned rig and said, "Hold my beer," because that is the dumbest looking. But you know what? And I got during seminar season this year, I got asked that question at just about every seminar. And the
Mhm.
same thing is, what do you think it represents? And I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier on your show. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't know. My thing is what I have learned is the slower the fall that is, and there's, you have dice baits, then you have your little urchin baits, and then you have now the big urchin. This thing is evolving faster than any, and the hooks, the way people are rigging it, it's all evolving faster. The bottom line is it can be fished like two things. It can be fished like a wacky worm and it can be fished like a jerkbait. Okay. And the thing is,
Okay.
when that thing is falling, it does next to nothing on a slow fall besides quiver a little bit. That's all it what does a Ned rig do when it's on the bottom? It's doing nothing. It sits there.
Yep.
Remember, there are two things, and I was lucky enough years ago to without getting into the story, the guy who invented the X-Wrap and a lot of the baits back then for Rapala was Mark Fisher. He's a Hall of Fame lure designer. And Fisher told me something that changed my jerkbait fishing, and I will say it in every seminar. The two most important things about jerkbait fishing is the pause and learning how to throw slack back to the lure. The pause is longer
Hmm.
or shorter depending on the depth of, or excuse me, depending on the temperature of the water. Okay. That's why that pause is important. Throwing slack back to that lure allows that lure to go off on its intended path. If more people would do that with crankbaits and jerkbaits, you would up your ratio of catches. If you talk to Jeremy Smith from Linder's Angling Edge, who I highly respect and is a great guy in his own right and an incredible angler, him and I were talking about jerk baits on my show one time, and he said, Jim, if people realize how important those two things were, throwing slack back to the lure and understanding the pause, two things have to happen every time you catch a fish. You have to attract them and you have to trigger them. You will not catch a fish without both those things happen. What is that pause? That pause is what that urchin's doing on the fall. It's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. That nothing is a trigger
Mhm.
because it's the beginning before it starts to do something. It is the pause of a regular action. That pause, in my opinion, is what draws strikes on jerk baits. When you pause a crankbait, when you throw a spinner bait up to something, when you're taking that fly and ripping it, stripping it, and pausing it, when you get a strike a lot of times on that pause, that doing nothing has been personified in that urchin bait.
I like it. That
That bait does nothing. Stop trying to make it do something. The
Mhm.
best thing you can do with a hair jig is nothing. You reel it back in as slow as you possibly can. The more you jig it, hop it, try to do something that you think it should do, the less fish you catch on.
Yep.
The urchin,
Absolutely.
wacky worm is the same way. The more you do with it, the less fish you will catch on it. Do the same thing with the urchin bait. Yeah, is it something they haven't seen before? Yeah. Could it resemble something that they're eating? Probably could. But when it comes right down to it, the how you retrieve it, the magic in that bait is not the bait itself. The magic in that bait is what the angler does or does not do with it.
Mhm. Well, it's counterintuitive. People get scared of the pause.
Yeah,
They're whether they're worried they need to get over the psychological hurdle because they're worried about, "I'm gonna snag on the bottom," or, "I'm not gonna feel that fish." Because 'cause we've all been there where you set
yeah.
the rod down or something happens and, "Oh, here it's doing nothing," like you said,
Why is my
and then you
line
pick it
moving?
back up. Yep,
Yeah,
you pick it back up, and then it's like, "Oh, wait, oh, I had one and I lost
yeah,
it. Shoot." And then we think, "Oh, well, I need to stay really tight to it. I need to stay like." And that's what if if you're thinking that way, so is everybody else, right? You
yeah.
gotta be doing it's like I mean, like anything. If you wanna trick the smartest fish in the lake or in the river, like, you gotta do things that other people aren't willing to do.
Yeah,
And a lot of times it's perfecting that finesse, and it's doing the little stuff like you said, like, trying
yeah.
to hit a
Fish,
quarter
I
with
mean,
your cast. It's in the precision.
fish. Yeah, fish don't think. People give them human traits. Stop doing that. They do 3
Mhm.
things. They swim, they eat, they make little fish. That's all they do.
Yep.
And, they survive for as long as they've survived because they react to their environment. And if they think something's food, it doesn't matter what we think it is, it doesn't matter what we think it looks like. All it matters is do they hit it or not?
Yep.
And if they hit it or not, a lot of times depends on the depth you have that lure at and the retrieve speed that you have that lure at. How are you presenting that lure? I was talking to Justin Lucas, MLF pro Justin Lucas, who's an absolutely fantastic guy, a couple weeks ago, and I was watching him do the retrieve on that big urchin bait in a tournament, that another tournament he just did real well in. And so we talked about how he did good on it. He said, I threw it out there, and he said, I just pulled it. He goes, I was working it like a jerk bait because guys had told me that's kind of what they were doing. And he goes, but I came across this thing in this pocket where I threw that thing in there, let it sink there, rip it hard twice, and let it sink. I go to rip it again, and I already had it.
Yeah.
He goes, so the thing would pulse, nothing. Pulse, nothing. When did they hit it? Nothing.
Nothing. Yep.
They hit it
Exactly.
on the nothing. And I've told guys this when I threw the little dice baits on a drop shot, when I rigged them on a drop shot, I would sit there and I would shake the rod tip and hit my finger in the rod tip. And how I learned to do that is I put the bait in shallow water and I watched it when I'm hitting my rod tip and I'm watching those strands pulse. So when I
Mhm.
drag that drop shot on the bottom, when I'd stop it, I do that. All of a sudden, line got tight.
Yep.
Just as that bait was pulsing, and then I'd stop, pulse it again, boom, and the rod go down.
Yep. And that's something that's like, that's such a great tip, and it's something that too few people actually do is watch what their lure or what their fly does at their feet so that they know exactly how quickly that thing sinks or exactly how reactive that is. If I just twitch my rod tip or do that little tap with the finger there and that whole thing's like just pulsing like crazy. Okay, now I know I don't need to do a whole lot to move that urchin or
Nope.
whatever it is, and it's it
There's a couple things and I tell this at every seminar. I ask a question to a guy, all right, to the audience every time. How many of you by a show of hands know exactly what your lures are doing on every single cast? 9 times out of 10, no hands call. I go, then you're missing fish.
Mhm.
If you have and you're missing opportunities. If you don't know what your lure is doing on every single cast, you are not fishing, you are hoping for a bite, you are wasting time.
Yep.
Understand what your lure does. You understand it by watching it in shallow water. Understand and learn what that lure is capable. All it is a tool. There are no magic lures out there. The magic, in my opinion, is in the presentation and the location of the fish.
Yep. The best color is confidence, right?
That's right. And green pumpkin. I will throw any color out there as long as it's green pumpkin.
Yep.
Right? It works. It's just one of those colors. So if you're learning a newer bait, like if you're learning to throw an urchin bait, throw a color you already have confidence in.
Mhm.
Because you already are a step ahead. Now you go, well,
Yep.
I catch a lot of colors on black and blue. Then throw a black and blue urchin. If you
Yep.
have a lot of confidence in green pumpkin, and throw a green pumpkin one. You will work that bait with more consistency off to start off because you have confidence in that color. Don't put yourself in a hole and go, oh, I got to throw Wonder Bread. Have you ever caught anything on Wonder Bread? No, then don't start throwing it.
Yep.
Work on that after you get confidence in the lure. But if you have confidence in green pumpkin, start out doing it with that.
Mhm.
But from what
Absolutely.
I've seen so far, the urchin baits and dice baits, the less you do with them, the more. And for whatever reason, that jerk ahead and fall. I was just watching Jason Christie, who just won a tournament. Just pitch it to cypress trees. Cypress trees. Pull out cypress tree, let it sink. Pull it off, let it sink. Pull, boom, there's a fish.
Yep.
So that is a lot of the retrieve. I've also seen how I've caught them is throw the bait in there, let it sink down there, and just kind of shake my rod a little bit, and you're making the bait just pulse, and then just let it fall. So I'd say, in my opinion, you can fish it like a wacky worm too, but that jerk bait retrieve is how it seems has been the most productive with that, unless you're looking at it forward facing sonar. And I'm not. I'm just throwing it shallow.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Well, part of it too, I always feel like, at least in my mind, it's you put out those 2 jerks and, like, that's vibration that's going into the
Mhm.
water, right? So even
Yeah,
if they can maybe they can't see, maybe they're looking the other way, but they're gonna feel that
feel that right.
at some point, and then give them that pause to come and find it, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, I always I'll tell my clients, like, "Just give it the super pause, like, an
Yeah.
extra 2 seconds beyond what you think you need
Yeah.
to do, and weird, line goes tight and it just
Yeah.
happens, you know? Like, let the
Now
fish find it, let them get there, don't have it run too much.
now the smaller urchin baits, like like the little super ball baits, those ones right
Mhm.
there, the small ones, I just rig those on a net head. And
Ooh.
I throw it on a 16th ounce net head, pitch it out and let it fall to the bottom, and I work it on the bottom just like a Ned rig.
Huh.
Works.
That just has to look gross.
It's weird. It just looks like a little thing going it looks like a little crab or something going across the
Right.
bottom.
I'm sure it looks awful crayfishy. Yeah, especially when that thing kinda just if it
Yeah.
kicks up and then sits there and quivers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So
like
I
that.
it's just another way to do something. If I've caught them in the area on a Ned rig or I just wanna throw something smaller, I'm gonna try that.
Definitely. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Well, dude, we've been going for over an hour here. I wanna be respectful of your time. Before we
Sure.
wrap up here, though, I got 2 final questions for you
Okay.
here. The first one, I've been asking this to everyone this summer. What is the coolest non-fishing thing you've seen while fishing?
The coolest non-fishing thing that I've seen. Wow, that's a great question. I don't um Oh, I know one first thing came out was a Canada trip, and I looked around and there was a bear swimming at the boat. Yeah.
Yeesh.
Yeah, that was, we need to move. Yeah, he was
Mhm.
just
Yep.
coming right it was just a younger bear, not a real big one, 100 pounder or something like that, but
Mhm.
he was coming right toward the boat. I'm like, "That's not something you see every day in Illinois." And, we just moved. So, yeah, that was one of the things that right off the bat that I think that was pretty cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's the coolest part of, like, doing anything outside though, right? Is,
Oh,
like, regardless of what you're pursuing, you're gonna see something else that was like, "I would not have seen that had I not been doing this one thing." I love
yeah.
that. I love hearing what sticks out and what memories are burned in people's mind in that regard, man. That's super, super cool. I love it. What do you have lined up for the rest of this summer? You mentioned that you got most of your filming done, but,
Yeah,
where
we
else are you
do.
headed?
We're heading up to Minnesota, another week or so, and we'll probably get 2 or 3 shows up there. Then we're gonna be almost done. Then I'm gonna fish a little bit around here, and then end of September, we're going to Lake of the Woods, a lodge, Shady Roost that we fish up there,
Mhm.
probably for muskies. We'll
Nice.
probably do a late fall trip there, and then I am going, to Brazil to fish
Ooh.
peacock bass.
Well, that'll just be terrible.
That'd be terrible. And so I actually just finished building 2 of the 3 rods that I'm gonna be taking, to Brazil with me because I wanna catch a peacock bass on a rod that I made.
Sweet.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've caught 'em in Miami and they were fun, the smaller ones, but I've got a really good friend who's from Brazil, and, he goes, "You need to do this." So we're gonna go after those peacocks and we're gonna go after some of those really big catfish that they have there, knock like 3 or 4 fish off my bucket list. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's gonna be a really cool adventure.
That's gonna be epic. That's gonna
Yeah.
be absolutely epic, dude. I'm excited for you, and like you said, yeah, we've barely scratched the surface here. We just, we've been nerding out on all this other stuff, and like you said, we got so much
And
space
that's
in
it
our
too,
heads
because
that, that's
I'm a nerd when it comes to fishing, lure building, rod building. I'm a nerd when
Mhm.
I like to know how my stuff works, and that's
Yeah,
why
absolutely.
I build a lot of my own stuff. I love it, and yeah, anytime, man. Anytime you're looking to nerd out some more, give me a buzz.
Absolutely. We're definitely gonna have you on to, talk lure building and rod building and everything sometime in the near future, but
Sure.
before we wrap up, man, where can folks go to, follow along with you and check out all the new episodes that are coming out and, just keep up with your season?
Thanks for asking. The easiest way to do it is just go to jimcrowleyoutdoors.com. Our entire television schedule is there for both Jim Crowley Outdoors and Slickfish Radio, so you can see everything there. And then you can follow along on my social media, which is Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And kind of like I told you in the beginning, if there's any parents listening here, I talk to a lot. I'm very fortunate to talk to a lot of high school students and college students when it comes to
Mhm.
fishing as well. And you're only going to find 3 things on my social media pages. You're going to find anything to do with fishing, about rod building or lure building, and you're going to hear me talk and profess my faith in Jesus Christ. That is it. All my pages are safe. If those things don't interest you, my pages isn't the one to follow. But if they are, they're totally safe for kids. And all we try to do is put out good, solid information. Like I told you before, I don't care if people agree with me or disagree with me. I just want them catching more fish. And being here with you and talking today, hopefully we got some people excited and that share the same passion that we do, and I sure appreciate the opportunity, Pierce.
Absolutely, Jim. I really appreciate your time. This was an absolute blast. I'm definitely looking forward to the next time we get a chance to chat. And if you find yourself making your way up through Wisconsin at all, maybe we'll have to kill an afternoon or something harassing some fish if we can find time. But
Oh, well, geez, I love coming to Wisconsin. I'm there a lot during the year, so we might just have to make that happen. But God bless you, your family, and all your listeners. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
awesome. I appreciate it, Jim. Good luck the rest of the summer. We'll talk to you soon.